Imagine you are driving at a 120 km on a highway, music on, windows down, and you see that sign along the roadside, but you have no idea what it means. You ignore it and keep driving straight. Do you know what happens next? Most probably an unseen disaster. What else? Because that sign was telling you the road bends sharply ahead. Now, what if I told you that the IELTS examiner puts the exact same kind of signs in the listening audio and reading passages? They are called linking devices. And if you have no idea what they mean, you will drive straight into the wrong answer every single time, and your dream of going abroad will crash even before taking off. Hello dear IELTS students, welcome back to your favorite channel where we break down IELTS and the English language related topics in a simple and fun way. Today's topic is something most students completely underestimate, and it costs them one or two bands in every single module. Yes, we are talking about linking devices. Now you might be thinking, I already know about however and moreover, so what's new? But trust me, by the end of this video, you will see these tiny words in a completely different light, because they are not just for writing, they are the examiner's number one tool to confuse you in listening, to trap you in reading, and they are what elevates your bands from 6 to 8 in writing and speaking. So stay with me, I'll show you how these linking devices can be game changer in your IELTS preparation. Let's dive in. Before we dive into the modules, let me define exactly what linking devices are, because many students consider them as just connectives. But in broader definition, linking devices are words or phrases that connect ideas, sentences, clauses, and paragraphs. They tell the reader and listener the relationship between two pieces of information. Think of them as traffic signs on a road. Without them, your ideas crash into each other. But with them, your ideas flow smoothly from one to the next. And these are the examiner's most lethal and favorite tools to trap you, especially in listening and reading modules. The linking devices in English are divided into different categories, each serving different purposes. All of these play a crucial role in your language use and understanding. But the linking words for contrast can play a more decisive role in picking the answer in listening and reading skills. I'll show you how. Now on your screen, you can see a table of linking devices organized into 7 categories. I want to walk you through each one, not just the words, but what job each category does in a sentence. Because knowing the word is only half the battle. Knowing the relationship it creates gives you the power in every single module. First category is for contrast. These words tell your reader that something unexpected is coming as two ideas are in conflict. In writing, this is how you present the other side of an argument. In listening and reading, this is the examiner's most favorite tool to reverse the information and catch you off guard. Whenever you see or hear any of these, hold on and be extremely attentive. The real point is always what follows. Next category is for addition. These linking devices simply say, I have more to tell you, and it supports the same point. In writing, stacking 2 or 3 pieces of evidence with addition words shows the examiner that you can build a sustained argument. In listening, if you hear furthermore or moreover, expect a second piece of information that the question may test separately. Next is cause and effect. These words explain why something happened or what happened as a result. This category has 2 directions. First includes words like because, since, and due to, and they point backwards to the cause. In second, words like therefore, consequently, and as a result point forwards to the effect. In listening especially, the examiner loves to chain 2 of these together in one sentence, and ask you about only the second one. Next category is for concession. This one is subtle and very important. A concession is when a writer or speaker acknowledges the opposite view but does not agree with it. Think of it as saying, yes, I see your point, but here is why I still disagree. In writing, using concession words is a sign of critical thinking and pushes you towards band 7 and above. In listening and reading, never pick the conceded point as the speaker's main opinion because the real view always comes after that. Next category is for condition. These words tell you that something is only true under certain circumstances. Nothing is absolute as there is a requirement attached. In listening, gap fill, and MCQs questions, a conditional statement is almost never a simple yes or no answer. And in writing, particularly in formal letters, using conditional structures like should this remain unresolved instead of just if you don't fix this immediately lifts your language level and your band. Now talking about linking for sequence and time. These are your signpost words as they guide the reader or listener through the audio of events or stages. In writing task 1, these are essential for describing a process diagram or a timeline. In speaking part 2, using sequence words like initially, following that, and eventually makes your long term sound organized and fluent rather than rushed and random. And finally, linking devices to express example and emphasis. These tell your reader that you are about to prove your point or make it stronger. In writing task 2, every main point needs support and for instance or for example is your signal that the evidence is coming. Words like indeed and in fact add weight to a statement. In reading, these words also help you locate specific examples in the passage when a question asks you to find supporting evidence. So that is your complete map of linking devices which includes 7 categories for 7 different purposes. Now here is what I want you to notice. Every single trap in listening, every trick in reading, and every band descriptor in writing and speaking connects back to one of these 7. Keep this table with you. We are going to use every single row of it in the examples coming up next. Now here is the key point I want you to write down right now, that how each of these categories changes the meaning of a sentence completely. For example, if the examiner uses although instead of because, the whole answer changes. This is exactly how the examiner sets traps in reading and listening by using linking devices to reverse or qualify what the speaker or writer actually says. Let's look at each module now. Let's start with listening because this is where linking devices cause the most damage to the student's score. You are only hearing the audio once and the examiner knows exactly how to use contrast words, concession words, and condition words to make you write the wrong answer. Let me show you 4 major trap types. For this purpose, the examiner mentions something attractive early in the sentence, exactly what you are looking for, and then uses a contrast device to take it back using words like however, but, although, despite, yet, whereas, and nevertheless. These words tell you to forget what you just heard because what comes next is the real information. Students who miss the contrast word write the first thing they hear, but that's the trap. Watch this example very carefully. For example, question asks, what time does the library close on Saturdays? And audio says, the library is normally open until 8 p.m. on weekdays. However, on Saturdays it closes at 5 p.m. Students who are not listening carefully will write 8 p.m. The word however completely reverses the information. So the answer is 5 p.m. because the question is about the close time on Saturday and not weekdays. Whenever you hear the words like however, but, although, despite, whereas, yet, on the other hand, and nevertheless, hold on and be attentive to what comes afterwards. The real answer almost always comes after the contrast words. Now have a look at this MCQ type question statement, its options, and listen to the audio.
Good morning and welcome to the Grand Elysian Hotel. I'd like to go over a few details before you check in. Parking at a hotel is free provided that you are a registered guest and as long as you validate your parking ticket at the front desk each morning. Non-guests wishing to use the parking will be charged the standard daily rate of £12. Breakfast is served from 7 until 10 in the Maple restaurant on the ground floor.
Now question number 1. According to the hotel receptionist, which statement about parking is correct? Option A. Parking is completely free for everyone who uses the hotel car park. Option B. Parking costs £12 per day for all guests. Option C. Guests can park free of charge if they validate their ticket at the front desk. Option D says parking is free for guests with no additional requirements. Now let's analyze each option according to the audio that we have listened. Option A removes the conditions entirely, that is, free for everyone, and it targets listeners who hear the word free and get trapped. Option B plants the £12 figure that applies only to non-guests. It tests whether the student was listening for who it applies to. Option C accurately reflects both condition words including provided that plus as long as without adding or removing anything. So this option is easily the correct one. Option D is the most dangerous distractor. It is half true as it says that guests do get free parking but silently drops the validation requirement. Students who caught the word free and the word guest but missed as long as you validate will fall for this one every time. This is exactly how IELTS MCQ options are written in real exam papers. The wrong answers are never completely invented. They are actually always built from real words in the audio, just with the condition, the subject, all the logic that is meticulously altered. Always watch for condition words if, when, unless, provided that, as long as, only if, and on condition that. These words tell you that a benefit or effect is not absolute, but it depends on something. This one has two cause-effect chains in a single sentence. The question asks about the second event, but students grab the first reason they hear and move on. The examiner knows you are hunting for a reason, so they give you a reason early in the sentence, let you feel satisfied, and then they quietly introduce a second cause for a second event using words like because, due to, as a result of, consequently, therefore, since, and owing to. You must track which cause belongs to which effect. Let me show you. For example, the question asks, why did the students fail their research projects? And these are the options. Their team leader was absent for 2 weeks. Option B, they did not complete the research on time. Option C, their supervisor did not accept their late submission. And option D, they were absent during the submission period. Now let's listen to what the audio says.
The students missed the submission deadline because their team leader was absent for 2 weeks. As a result, their supervisor refused to accept the late submission, which ultimately caused them failing the project altogether.
The examiner here builds three events in a single sentence and connects them with separate cause-effect words. The question targets only the final event, but every earlier cause is planted as a wrong option. Here is how each wrong option was deliberately constructed. The option A lifts the first cause word because and its subject. Students who stop tracking after the first connector will fall into this trap here. Option B paraphrases the outcome phrase missed deadline with paraphrasing did not complete on time using different words, so it clearly becomes a distractor. The audio says the supervisor refused to accept the late submission, which confirms the paraphrasing did not accept in this option, making it the correct answer. Option D swaps team leader with students, and this option catches listeners who heard absent but missed exactly who was absent. And now we come to the fourth trap, and I want you to listen very carefully because this is the one that hurts the most in section 3 and section 4 of IELTS listening, where speakers express opinions and arguments. This trap is built on what we call a concession. A concession is when a speaker admits or acknowledges a point, but they do not agree with it as their main position. Think of it like this. Someone says, I admit the food was good, but then they say, even so, the restaurant was too expensive for me. So the real opinion is the second part. Students pick the admitted point as the answer and lose mark. So never trust what comes before these words: admittedly, granted, even though, of course, even so, and while it may be argued. Whenever you hear these words, your brain must stay alert for what comes after them. That is always the dominant real position. Let me prove it to you right now. For example, question asks, does the speaker recommend the diet plan? Audio says, admittedly, some participants did lose weight on this plan, even though the majority reported feeling fatigued and dissatisfied. Admittedly is a concession, and the speaker is acknowledging a point they don't fully agree with. The dominant view comes after even though. The speaker does not recommend it. So, students who hear lose weight and stop listening will get this wrong. Concession words like admittedly, granted, it is true that, of course, and while it may be argued are the examiner's favorite traps. The real opinion always follows the concession. So never choose the conceded point as the final answer. Now let's do a quick mini practice. I'm going to play a short audio, pause the video, answer the questions, then I'll explain each answer using the linking devices.
The new community center offers a range of services. Although it was initially designed for senior citizens, it now welcomes people of all ages. In addition, membership fees have been waived for students provided that they present a valid student ID. However, the swimming pool will remain closed until renovations are complete due to structural concerns identified last month. Despite this setback, the management also confirmed that yoga and fitness classes will continue as normal.
Write done listening in the comments below and I'll share the answers. The reading module is where linking devices play a double role. Firstly, the examiner uses them to write complex passages with layered ideas. Second, the questions themselves are often built around a paraphrase of the linking logic in the passage. For example, if the passage says, despite Y, X happened, The question might paraphrase it as Y occurred even though X was the case. If you don't understand both forms of the linking devices here, you will mark the answer as false when it's actually true. Let me show you exactly how this works. Look at the following information from the passage and its related question statement. Passage says sales of electric vehicles rose significantly in 2022 despite ongoing supply chain disruptions that affected battery production across the industry. Statement says supply chain problems prevented the growth of electric vehicle sales in 2022. The passage mentions supply chain disruptions, so the students panic and mark it true. But the linking word despite tells us the disruptions did not prevent growth. So the statement is false. When you see despite, in spite of, even though, while, whereas, and although in the passage, the statement in the question will often try to reverse the relationship. So read the linking word first, then the content. Have a look at this part of a passage and the sample question. The passage says the ancient city was abandoned not because of military defeat, but as a result of prolonged drought that made agricultural production impossible. And the question says the city was deserted mainly due to dash. So choose no more than two words from the passage. What could be your answer? Students write military defeat as it is mentioned early, but the phrase not because of cancels it. So the answer is prolonged drought. The cause effect structure here has a negation embedded in the first connector. Now let's reveal how linking devices can make or break your matching heading questions. Look at the following paragraphs beginning and three heading options. Option A matches the first sentence, but the paragraph's main focus is introduced by the linking device. Nevertheless, the barriers as paraphrasing of challenges here. In heading matching questions, the dominant topic comes after the contrast word. So option B is correct here. Always identify the first linking device in the paragraph. If it's a contrast word, the real topic of the paragraph is what comes after it. The opening line is often just background context. Now it's time to do some practice. See this passage, pause the video here, focus on the highlighted linking devices and answer the following questions. Write done reading questions in the comments and I'll share the answers. In IELTS writing, 25% of your total mark for each task is based on something called coherence and cohesion. Cohesion is almost entirely about linking devices. But here is what many students don't know. It's not about how many linking devices you use. It's actually about using the right ones for the right logical relationship because the examiner penalizes you if you use however where you should use therefore. Let me show you the difference between a band 5 and a band 7 paragraph using the same ideas. For example, look at these two paragraphs. These two paragraphs have the same ideas. The first one is clearly lacking in bridging among the ideas and seem separate sentences instead of a bunch of connected sentences forming a paragraph. But the band 7 version uses 5 different types of linking devices that each serve a distinct logical function. The linking at the beginning, since, shows cause. Furthermore, in the second sentence shows addition. However, in the following shows contrast. Even though shows concession. And as a result, obviously for result. This is how the sentences and ideas are linked logically to form magnitude, making it an effective paragraph and the examiner can easily trace the argument clearly. In task 1, linking devices are used differently. You use sequence words to describe trends over time, contrast words to compare groups, and result words to describe changes. Let me show you how. Look at this sample task 1 paragraph. The linking words used in this paragraph such as initially, following this, despite, and by contrast show the examiner that you understand the data story, not just the numbers, and they help connect the data logically and naturally. Talking about general IELTS, where task 1 is about writing a letter instead of a report. Let's see how linking devices can help you write an effective letter. Notice how, although for contrast, in addition to support the previous idea, as a result to show what happened afterwards, and should this matter remain unresolved, sound much more formal and sophisticated than saying if you don't fix this. Using such connectors in a formal letter is an easy band boosting move in general IELTS letters. When you are aiming for the band 7 plus score, your word choice is crucial. You have to move away from basic connectors. So instead using but, start your sentences with however or nevertheless. Just remember to add a comma afterward. For adding information, swap also for furthermore or in addition to sound more formal in your paragraphs. When explaining causes, replace so with therefore or consequently and use since, owing to, or due to in place of because to boost your academic register. If you are building an argument, use not only but also instead of just and. Finally, save ultimately and in conclusion for your wrap up rather than using finally throughout your writing. Now let's talk about how to use linking devices in speaking effectively. A major mistake many students make is using formal academic linking words in their speaking test, which can make you sound robotic or unnatural. Remember, your speaking score relies on fluency and conversational flow, so you need conversational connectors that sound smooth and fluent. That's why, if you are showing contrast, instead of saying nevertheless or however, try phrases like having said that, then again, and mind you. When you need to add information, skip furthermore or moreover and use on top of that, what's more, or not just that. For explaining causes, swap therefore or consequently for that's why, which is why, or so basically. And if you are conceding a point, rather than saying admittedly or granted, go for natural openers like to be honest, I mean, or in a way. Using these conversational alternatives will make your speech sound much more genuine and fluent. Let's consider different responses without and with connectors to the same question. For example, you are asked this question, do you prefer using public transport or driving? And you respond like, I like driving, it is fast, public transport is sometimes slow, I drive every day. You see, these bunch of sentences lack connectivity. That's why they will not take you more than 5 bands level. Now consider this response to the same question. To be honest, I'd usually opt for driving simply because it gives me more flexibility. Having said that, on really busy days, I sometimes take the bus just to avoid the traffic. What's more, it's actually better for the environment even if it takes a bit longer. This one is clearly connected with natural flow, so it can easily fall in band 7 plus bracket. Using connectors in long speech is even easier, such as this response to the given topic. The topic says describe a skill you learned, and the response says
I'd like to talk about learning how to cook. Initially, I had absolutely no idea where to start. In fact, I couldn't even boil an egg properly. However, it was during lockdown that I finally had enough time to properly learn. First of all, I started watching cooking videos online and gradually I began experimenting with simple recipes. Even though I made plenty of mistakes early on, I got better with practice. As a result, I now cook for my whole family on weekends. Not only is it cheaper than eating out, but also it's something I genuinely enjoy. Having said that, I still have a lot to learn when it comes to baking.
this response using sequence, contrast, cause, addition, and concession connectors all naturally. The candidate never sounds like they are reciting. That's the difference between forced connectors and natural ones. Similarly, in part 3 questions, you can respond this type of question in this way. For example, do you think technology has made people less socially connected? And response,
It's a complex issue, and while it's tempting to say technology isolates people, I think the reality is more nuanced. On the one hand, excessive screen time can certainly replace real face-to-face interaction. On the other hand, platforms like video calling, having genuinely helped families stay connected across continents. That's why I believe it ultimately comes down to how technology is used, provided that we remain mindful of maintaining real-world relationships alongside our digital bonds.
before we conclude this lecture, let me give you the top mistakes I see every day from students, even those who are otherwise quite good at English. Mistake number 1 is starting every sentence with firstly, secondly, thirdly, furthermore, in addition, moreover. This looks mechanical. Rather, try to mix connectors with other cohesive devices like pronouns, synonyms, and demonstratives such as this, these, such, and so on. Second common problem is that saying furthermore, I'd argue that, and so on in a spoken response sounds robotic. Instead, use on top of that or what's more, I think, and so on when speaking. Focusing on nouns and numbers in listening while missing small words like although, unless, provided that, these single words completely change the correct answer. Although pollution is rising, renewable energy adoption is accelerating. Students answer pollution is rising as the main passage, which is wrong because the main clause after the dependent clause with although carries the key information. And that's it for today's masterclass on linking devices. We have covered all 4 IELTS modules and showed you exactly how linking devices are not just writing tool, they are in fact examiner's tool in listening and reading, and they are your tool in writing and speaking. Before wrapping up, here is your assignment. Take any paragraph from a newspaper or IELTS reading passage, highlight every linking device, and just write down what logical relationship it expresses. Do this for just 5 paragraphs, and I promise you, your performance in practice test will shoot up right away. If you found this video helpful, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel for more content like this, and drop a comment below telling me which module you found most useful today. I'll see you in the next one. Keep learning, keep smiling, and best of luck for your exam preparation. Take care.